So you get to write the affirmations that are going to help you really come forward to be the woman that you want to be. Like for me to say, I am a woman of dignity and grace, cracks me up, because I found my wedding pictures the other day and I looked at my wedding pictures. And 2 nights before my wedding, I put my fist through a wall. I was so mad at my soon-to-be husband. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt I should be canceling this wedding. I wasn't a woman of dignity and grace. And so when I was writing, I am a woman of dignity and grace, that just wasn't true for me. But today I am so grateful. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I am a woman of dignity and grace. I'm not a perfect woman. I don't always act with perfection. You know, I shared yesterday that I get to go and make an amends to my coworker tomorrow, you know, and that's how you do it. You make mistakes and you own them and you just keep moving forward. So those affirmations to me are, sure.
You know, like when people have got alcohol or drug addictions, they go to rehab or they have therapy. Do you think there's a point where someone who's addicted to maybe an abusive partner or a chaotic partner and their life may be at risk or suicidal, that they may need a therapeutic intervention?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we are addicted to adrenaline. We are addicted to bad people. You know, we are addicted to the high, high, high and the low, low, low. You know, we're trying to come here and like stabilize. Like, let's just figure out how we can stabilize. And that's why no contact, the gift of no contact is huge. Like if we can do no contact with the people who are qualifiers, you know, it's really a huge gift. So what does sanity look like today? What does recovery look like today? So I remember going along at first and I would come to the moment where it was the crossroads, you know, like I wanted to reach out to the guy and I could see, like I visually could see, this is the moment of my recovery. I'm either going to go deeper into my recovery. This is the 2 roads that diverged in the woods, or I'm going to go into more insanity. And so that's where it involves the healing pain versus the hurting pain. So the healing pain is you sit on your hands, you bite your tongue, you do everything you can to stay in that moment. You just stay with it. And absolutely, as someone wrote into our chat here, that if you can't do no contact, start wherever you can. I left a voice memo for someone this morning and I said, just start. If they send you a text, wait an hour. Like that's the tiniest baby step, or wait 15 minutes, like begin something. Like don't give up on yourself is so big. So so I would see this crossroads and it was like, that was the deciding moment. And I would say, what does recovery look like now? Like right now, what would I do? I'd call a fellow. I have to tell you, that was the answer to that question more times than not. I'd call a fellow. I'd get to a meeting. I'd do my writing. I'd go for a walk, but it's not acting out. So that's the healing pain. And you walk through that healing pain. No contact, or as little contact as you can have, is one of the biggest gifts that we give ourselves. And then going forward, like that's what sanity would look like today, is whatever that step is. But I want you to see what sanity would look like in the big picture. So if you have a qualifier who's looming in your life and you're in that space where you're not comfortable or ready to go no contact, I want you to keep the vision that no contact is probably the healthiest thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, see the long-term vision of sanity And then you can say, okay, but what am I going to do today? Okay, I'm not quite ready for that, but here's what I'm going to do today. So I want to go on to step 3, so we can move through these. So step 3 is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And so this is our surrender. You know, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says we are like men who have lost their legs and we don't go grow new ones, and we are beyond human aid. And so there is no dating strategy that we have here in S.L.A.A. I think a lot of women come here and they think we're going to teach them how to date the sicko dude. You know, we're going to teach them the strategies for dating, and we don't have any strategies. You know, we have dating plans that help us go, remember everybody, what is it? Slow. We have dating plans that help us to go slow so that we can see someone for who they really are. And when we can see someone for who they really are, then we're not falling prey to our love addiction, who makes everybody perfect. But we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And if you haven't memorized our 3rd step prayer, I would urge you to memorize the prayer. But this is where we say, okay, I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of God. So remember those things that we just said we're powerless over in step 1, and what sanity would look like in step 2. Now, just do this with me. Hold your hands open. Just everybody hold your hands open, just like this. If you're listening to this recording, just hold your palms up in front of you like you're giving somebody a gift. And so there's many times where I will physically do this to my higher power. Like I am giving it all to you, God. And that physical walking around my house, if there's something I'm particularly obsessed over, I will walk around my house any chance I get, because that's my reminder. So we talk about a God box. We put something in a God box. A God box is just a physical manifestation of I'm turning this over, and you might have to put it in your God box 10 times. You're turning it over, and you might have to walk around everywhere with your hands up and open. But we're saying to our higher power, I offer myself to thee. And sometimes that's all I have to say is, God, I offer myself to thee. And that just soothes everything right there. You know, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Like build with me and do with me as you see fit, not me. So we then step in and we say, this is what my physical manifestation and action is to demonstrate to my higher power that I really am willing. This is what I'm going to do. So, you know, I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of God, but the demonstration and the example of that is I'm going to get to 90 meetings in 90 days. If you're new, I urge you, do your best to get to 90 S.L.A.A. women's meetings in 90 days. And I am so excited that I can say that because of the miracle of Zoom, you can get to a women's meeting every single day now. And so we get to meetings. You write on your steps. You write on what are your power lists. That's my example. I'm going to make 2 phone calls to other fellows plus my sponsor. If you have a sponsor, if you're in your first 90 days, you want to be aggressively chasing recovery. You want to be aggressively putting your action and intensity into it. And okay, here's what I'm going to do to stay sober. You know, so you're making your phone calls, you're doing your meetings, you're doing your writing, you're getting into the center of the program. Getting into the center of the program means like the flock of sheep. So if you've got a flock of sheep, the worst predator for the sheep is the wolf. Okay. And for us, if we're like the flock of sheep, the worst predator for us would be current qualifiers, but future qualifiers as well. And so the person who's on the outskirts of, or the sheep that's on the outskirts of the flock is the one that's the easiest to get picked off by the wolf. So in our terms, the person who's in the center of the program, meaning they are eating, sleeping, breathing to the best of their ability, S.L.A.A. You know, they're talking to women and they're keeping their conversations on the solution. Our phone calls, our outreach calls are not about saying, you know, he or she did this again and they did that again. Because then we are not a self-help group and we are not a support group. We are a 12-step recovery group. And there's a big difference. Support groups will just listen to you go round and round and round and round. All about whatever happened and whatever's going to happen. And you feel frustrated when you're on the phone and this is happening and you don't know why. That's why I'm identifying this. As you go round and round and round, they're talking about, you know, he or she did this and he or she said that. And what should I do? What should I do? And there's no answer. You know, it's not our job to solve these problems for people, but what is the solution? So we're solution seeking. What is the solution? So the solution usually has something to do with recovery and doing what I can do. I can only change me today. So I can only change me. So I'm demonstrating through these things that show to God I've turned it over. Now, what if I said, you know, here's what I'm powerless over. My life is unmanageable. I'm turning this over, or I have a higher power that I believe will restore me to sanity. And then I turn it over. But when you don't identify what you do to turn it over, you know, at first it's just a concept. It's hard to turn this over. You know, there's some vagueness that's in here. So if I really believe that I'm powerless and I really believe there's something that's called sanity, like how do I get access to that? And that's what you're defining in step 3. You're turning your life over to the care of this higher power, and your access to that is I don't have a direct line to God. So my access is through you, through meetings, through writing, through reading the literature, through meditation. And I think people want to begin meditation immediately when they get in the program, because meditation, even if you start with 1 minute, we have to learn to sit through the impulses to make phone calls we shouldn't be making, to do cyber stalking we shouldn't be doing, to do actions that we shouldn't be taking. So meditation, even early on, before step 11, helps us to really be able to live recovery and sit through these things. And it's especially important to have a solid meditation practice before you begin sober dating. So those are our 3 steps. That this is the way that I want you to take them, like every morning, forever. Now, yes, as you work them, you dig deeper into them. I absolutely encourage each of you to read every word in our basic text in the AA 12 and 12 and write on that and absorb that, because we're like sponges and our minds are absorbed or saturated in our addiction. And so we're wringing out the sponge and then we're putting in the new recovery terms, the new way of life. We're learning how to live a new life in recovery. And so that's what we're doing. So I'm going to go through those again. So you wake up, you say, I admit I'm powerless over my sex and love addiction and my life is unmanageable. And here's what that looks like today. And you identify what is it today that you're powerless over and what could make your life unmanageable, or what is making your life unmanageable. You're making a choice at that point, and you say those things. And those many things are your bottom lines. You know, your bottom lines, you want to know what those bottom lines are, and you want to know what your sobriety date is. You know, your sobriety date is really important because you're charting a new course. And then you say, I believe a power greater than myself will restore me to sanity. And this power, you connect to that power. Like, I am loved. This power loves and supports and cares about me. And today, here's what sanity would look like. Sanity is doing everything that leads to a positive and powerful life, that leads to serenity and joy and a depth to life. It's not confusion. If there's somebody hanging around that's confusing, if they fall into that cheater, abuser, user, loser, and confuser, that's not, if I'm in a state of confusion and I can't figure it out, I'm not doing my job. That's God's job. And so then I turn my will and my life over to the care of God today, like right now. And here's what I'm giving to you, God. I'm giving this all to you. And I'm going to get to, today I'm doing a workshop, and, I'm going to be focusing on doing some writing this afternoon. I'm going to be doing self-care. I'm going to be getting to meetings this week. I'm always meditate every single day. And so that's what you're going to do to move forward. So we have officially been on for about an hour and a half. We're a little bit shy of that now. And so I know there's a ton of questions. So I'll take questions for about 15 minutes, and then we'll see where we are at that point. And so it would be really great if we could take the questions first that are the most likely to apply to everyone. And so that everyone can benefit through this Q&A time. How does that sound? Okay, now should I look at these little blue hands? I guess I should probably pay attention to the little blue hands. So
are they blue? Oh, usually they're like beige, but anyway, whatever.
On mine, they're blue. But with respect for anonymity, I'm just going to ask you if you'll, speak, if you'll go down to through the hands. So I do want to underscore that this is recorded and will be shared with women throughout S.L.A.A. So if you want to respect your anonymity, you do not need to say your name, but I just welcome you to ask a question. So if you're at the top of that list, go for it.
Do you want me to call on people? Like,
well,
not the name, but like, just,
that's defying the anonymity.
I know, I'm just saying maybe where they're from.
So whoever wants to ask the first question.
I'll go.
And if you are able to turn on your screen to ask questions, that would be awesome. If not, that's okay too.
Sure. I'll go. It's early here, so excuse my attire.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you 2 days in a row.
Yeah. My question for you is, when we first initially attacked the program and we're going and applying this aggressive approach, my question is, when I do the outreach calls, sometimes it feels re-triggering, like I'm re-jarring the same things or the same situations over and over and over again. And in the outreach calls, it just seems like we're just talking about the problems over and over again and not necessarily focus. Sometimes I find it's better to not necessarily reach out, but to focus on my own healing. And I don't know if that's the right approach, but I find that some groups can be more so triggering of just talking about the old. So when we reach out, the goal is to talk about the problem, or is the goal to talk about how we're doing in our recovery?
The goal is to talk about the solution. And this is what happens, when I was sponsoring quite a few women, and I always require, 2 phone calls a day plus me, like forever, like I've made 2 phone calls a day. Like I've been on business trips and I'm making 2 phone calls a day. So, but those phone calls need to be focused on the solution. So I remember one sponsee coming to me and she was saying, no, I'm calling, nobody's taking my call and nobody's returning my call. And I said, what? Like, who are you calling? And she said, women I'm sitting in meetings with. And, you know, we had lots of live meetings at that time. I said, well, something's wrong. And so in analyzing the problem, you're touching on it right now. The problem is phone calls are taking too long and they're too focused on the problem. So we've got to figure out how to have phone calls that are short, that focus on the solution and build into recovery. Like you finish that phone call and you go, I think I can handle this. I think, like my definition of sanity, whatever that is for that day for you, like what I defined as sanity this morning, you know, let's just go with no contact. So today I'm going to be able to do no contact a lot easier than before I got on that phone call. So it's, you know, I see in many of our chats, it'll say OR 3/3 FB, which means outreach call. You share 3 minutes, I share 3 minutes, and we're going to do feedback. And then there'll be a number 3. So for 3 minutes. And those things are so important. And I remember doing those calls for the first time and saying, okay, how much time do you have? Do you want to share for 5 minutes? And then I'll share for 5 minutes. And then if we want to do feedback, we can for 5 minutes. Perfect. That's 15 minutes and we're in and out of here. So you begin to see what works for you. So you can post in our chat. I see people on here right now that I see post in there regularly. Anybody available for outreach? And all the time, somebody says, I can. And so then define it. Like, what's your time frame? I'd love to do, 5 and 5 with feedback, or I'd love to do, 3 and 3, no feedback. But I have to tell you, one of the funniest experiences I had, I was probably 3 years sober, maybe, and I was in the middle of a sober breakup. And a sober breakup is never as bad. The withdrawal is never as bad as the initial withdrawal of a breakup, or as the initial withdrawal getting into the program. But I was going to meetings everywhere. I mean, I went to 5 meetings in 7 days in 3 different counties: Los Angeles County, Orange County, and San Diego County. I was really dedicated. It was a breakup that was around Christmas time. And that's hard to go through a breakup anytime, but it was around Christmas time. And one of the women from one of these meetings phoned me, and I just love outreach so much. And so she goes on and 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 on. And we weren't putting boundaries on things then, and I didn't know how. And so finally I said, okay, I'm going to have to go here in a minute, but I have a few things that I'd like to share too. And she goes, oh no, I don't do that. I don't do that. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I gotta go. And it's like, no, she couldn't hear. And she said, I just can't hear other people's stuff right now. Like, okay, let's move right along then. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do outreach with somebody like that. That's called my mom. My mom would call and she would spew at me. She would spew at me and then hang up. No, I don't do that. So anyway, but I share that story more just how we're all bumbling through this, and we're all trying to figure it out. And this is a great tool. So you can put in OR stands for outreach. You can put in your time, 3 and 3 is really short, but you do whatever you want to do. And then you put with feedback or without feedback. And then you just try to keep it focused on the solution. Like you could even say that solution-focused outreach, anyone? And then put what your time availability is. And also you can write to people privately and just say, when are you available for outreach the next few days? And go from there. And what I'm so good for is I love people leaving me voice memos on WhatsApp. And I prefer if they're 5 minutes or shorter, but I can respond to those at any time. And it's a different kind of an outreach, but it works. You know, it really works. I love it. I'm in communication with many of you, and it's really, really special. I treasure it. I treasure those. Okay, so I want to go on to another question. Who else wants to jump in?
Hi.
Ah. Hi, I'm Lindsay from Vermont.
Hi.
I'm just curious. Hi, thank you so much for this workshop. Oops, sorry. I'm just curious about how to stay engaged. So like with my compulsive overeating, I'm in a rigorous, you know, how program. I'm willing to go to any lengths. I have to eat every day to stay alive. But if I'm in that anorexic mode of not, right, like I haven't dated anyone in 6 years since my son was born, but whenever I even touch in, I'm batshit, you know, crazy. So, but I can keep it at bay, because if I'm not doing it, then that craziness doesn't show up. How do you stay engaged in the program if we don't have to do this every day, you know? And then my second question is, can you work a S.L.A.A program around all your codependency issues? So, because there's CODA, S.L.A.A, Al-Anon, and I don't know which one to do. So I have two questions. How do you stay engaged when it's your, yeah.
Everybody's done 3 or 4 programs.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm a single mom with a 5-year-old, and I've also got time constraints too, you know, so.
Go where the fire is burning the most.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's look at this. You're posing a really serious or important point, and that is the way I work my program when I'm not dating is very different than how I work my program when I am dating. I'm working it, it's insurance every single day. You're working it, it's insurance, you're putting a ton into it and making your outreach calls. You're doing all of that. You have to get a foundation of recovery. That sponge has to have all the old stuff wrung out of it. You have to be putting new stuff in. So, but if I'm in a sober dating situation and I'm on apps and I'm, you know, actually going on dates, which I have done COVID safe dating through this entire coronavirus, it's a different level of attentiveness. My outreach calls are talking about that, and there's more of a focus. So it is different. But your question is, do you have to work the program? I think this was your question. Do you have to work the program even when you're not having to deal with that person? Did I understand you correctly?
I think it's more like, how do you stay engaged? Like, I know I'm addicted to fantasy and love because, again, I get crazy. But if I'm not facing it on a daily basis, I can become anorexic and be like, I don't have to deal with this.
Yeah.
Because
Well, it sounds like you're being really honest with yourself. And so your question's going to be, how do I stay engaged in recovery? We have to figure out how to stay in the center of recovery and focus on all of this, even though it may look like, you know, I don't have to. And your second question about, can you apply S.L.A.A to all of your different codependencies? So there's so many programs, you know, we've all touched on, you know, I go to Al-Anon, I go to OA, I go to Mindful Eaters Anonymous, all these different things. We could just have a plethora, but we have to go to the program where the fellowship helps us to heal what we need to heal. I need to hear you ladies speaking about how you're healing in relationships. I need to hear how you're learning how to communicate with dignity and grace. That's what I need to hear the most. And so you're going to have to see if those distinctions of ACA and CODA and S.L.A.A, like which one is the one you're dealing with the most. And, you know, I've been introduced to ACA multiple times over the years and absolutely love it. And I hear so many women say that it's the one that goes hand in hand with S.L.A.A the most. And, but I think that it is really you being able to say, where am I hurting the most? Because someone will say, you know, I'm struggling with my eating too. Well, you know, you can do both by all means. Many of us have to do multiple programs, but you need to spend the most time where you need the most healing. So you get to